The cemetery was emptying fast, but I couldn't move my feet from the freshly turned earth that now covered my husband of 32 years. Robert had been my everything, my protector, my provider, my best friend. And now he was gone, swallowed by the ground while our son Daniel stood 20 feet away, checking his phone with the same cold expression he'd worn throughout the entire service. "Mom, we need to go," Daniel called out, his voice sharp with impatience that cut through my grief like a blade. I nodded, wiping my eyes with the tissue that had disintegrated from overuse, and made my way toward the black sedan Daniel had rented for the occasion. The car that would take us back to the house where Robert's laughter once filled every room. The house that now felt like a mausoleum waiting to claim its next victim. But something in Daniel's eyes made my stomach turn. He opened the passenger door for me. A gesture that would have seemed kind if I hadn't noticed the way his jaw clenched, the way his fingers drummed against the roof of the car with barely contained. What? Anger? Resentment? I couldn't tell anymore. The son I'd raised had become a stranger over the past 5 years, ever since he'd married that woman, Victoria, who watched me now from the driver's seat with eyes like chips of ice. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart," I said softly as I settled into the back seat, my arthritic knees protesting the movement. Daniel said nothing. He just slammed the door with enough force to make me flinch. The drive started normally enough, if anything about burying your husband could be called normal. We pulled out of the cemetery gates, past the flower shop where Robert used to buy me roses every Friday, turned onto Maple Street where we'd lived for 3 decades. But then Daniel made a turn that didn't make sense. "Honey, this isn't the way home," I said, leaning forward between the seats. "I know," he replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Victoria smiled at him, actually smiled, and placed her perfectly manicured hand over his. A gesture that should have been comforting, but somehow felt conspiratorial. Like they were sharing a secret I wasn't meant to understand. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice smaller than I'd intended. No one answered. The houses grew farther apart as we drove, the manicured lawns giving way to empty fields, the streetlights becoming sparse, and then disappearing altogether. My heart started to pound, a primal warning system that something was terribly, horrifically wrong. This was my son, I told myself. My baby boy who I'd rocked to sleep 1,000 times, who I'd nursed through chicken pox and heartbreak and every scraped knee. He wouldn't hurt me. But the person behind the wheel wasn't looking at me like a son anymore. 20 minutes passed in suffocating silence before Daniel pulled onto a dirt road I'd never seen before. The kind of road that didn't appear on maps, that people only found when they were lost or looking for a place where no one would hear screams. The sedan bounced over potholes, tree branches scraping against the windows like skeletal fingers trying to claw their way inside. "Daniel, please, you're scaring me," I whispered. He slammed on the brakes so hard I was thrown forward, my seatbelt catching painfully across my chest. We were in the middle of nowhere, fields stretched out on either side, empty and dead in the late autumn chill. No houses. No cars. No witnesses. "Get out," Daniel said, his voice flat and emotionless. I stared at the back of his head, certain I'd misheard. "What?" I said, "Get out of the car, Mother." He turned to look at me then, and what I saw in his eyes made my blood freeze in my veins. This wasn't anger or grief or temporary madness. This was calculation. This was a decision he'd already made, probably long before today. "Daniel, what are you doing? It's getting dark, we're miles from anywhere." "You should have thought about that before you destroyed everything," Victoria interjected, her voice dripping with venom I'd never heard directed at me so openly. My hand started to shake. "I don't understand, I haven't destroyed anything, I've only ever tried to." "To what? Control him? Manipulate him? Make him choose between his wife and his mommy for 5 goddamn years." Victoria turned fully around now, her pretty face twisted into something ugly and cruel. "Well, guess what? He chose. And you lost." Daniel reached back and grabbed my purse from beside me, yanking it so hard the strap burned across my shoulder. He opened the door, walked around to my side, and pulled me out of the car with a roughness that would have broken Robert's heart. I stumbled, my heel catching on a rock, and nearly fell. "My purse, my phone. Daniel, please at least leave me my phone," I begged, hating the desperation in my voice but unable to stop it. He threw my purse on the ground 10 feet away, in the opposite direction of the car. When I instinctively moved toward it, he grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "You walk that way," he pointed down the empty road, away from civilization, away from help. "And you keep walking. Maybe it'll give you time to think about what you've done." "What I've done?" My voice cracked, tears streaming down my face. I loved you. I raised you. I gave you everything. You gave me a cage, Daniel hissed, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker behind his eyes, pain maybe or the ghost of the boy he used to be. But then Victoria called his name from inside the car, and whatever humanity I'd glimpsed vanished like smoke. He got back in the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. And as I stood there in my funeral dress and heels, watching the taillights disappear into the gathering darkness, I realized with absolute certainty that this wasn't just abandonment. This was something far worse, and the real nightmare was only just beginning. Because in my purse, lying in the dirt 15 feet away, my phone started to ring. My legs felt like they'd been filled with concrete as I stumbled toward my purse, the gravel digging into my feet through my thin funeral heels. Each step was agony, but the ringing phone pulled me forward like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. I fell to my knees beside the purse, dirt staining my black dress as I fumbled with the zipper, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the fabric. The phone was still ringing, 3 rings, 4, 5, and I finally managed to wrench it free just as I heard the click of someone answering. "Hello," I gasped, pressing the phone to my ear with both hands as if it might disappear. "Hello, please, I need help. Eleanor?" The voice on the other end made me freeze. Deep, weathered, familiar in a way that sent chills down my spine. Eleanor Hartley? I hadn't been called by my maiden name in over 3 decades. "Who is this?" I whispered, looking around the empty road as paranoia crept up my spine. Had Daniel planned this somehow? Was someone watching me right now? "You don't recognize my voice? That hurts, Ellie. After everything we meant to each other." My breath caught. There was only one person who'd ever called me Ellie, and he'd been dead to me for 33 years. Long before I'd even met Robert, back when I was young and stupid and thought bad boys with dangerous smiles could be saved by love. "James!" The name came out like a curse. A low chuckle. "There she is. I was wondering if you'd forgotten all about me, living your perfect little life with your perfect little family." His tone turned sharp. "Except it's not so perfect anymore, is it? I heard about Robert. My condolences." How did he know? How could he possibly know Robert had died just 3 days ago? The obituary had only run in the local paper, and James lived, or had lived, in a different state entirely. Unless he'd been keeping tabs on me all these years, watching from the shadows, waiting for what? "What do you want, James?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. The shock of his call had momentarily pushed aside my immediate crisis, but now reality came crashing back. "I can't talk right now, I'm in the middle of..." "You're in the middle of being abandoned on Route 47, approximately 15 miles from the nearest town, by a son who hates you and a daughter-in-law who wants you dead." He said it so casually, as if he were reading from a shopping list. Or am I wrong? My heart stopped. I spun around, scanning the darkening fields, the empty road, the tree line in the distance. He was here. He had to be here, watching me somehow. "Where are you?" I demanded, trying to sound brave and failing miserably. "That's not the question you should be asking, Ellie." A pause, loaded with meaning I couldn't decipher. "The question you should be asking is, how did your son know to bring you to this exact spot?" Ice flooded my veins. "What are you talking about?" "Route 47, mile marker 12. Ring any bells?" When I didn't answer, he continued. "No. Let me help. This is the same road where they found Jennifer Morrison's body 5 years ago. Dumped in a ditch, no ID, no witnesses. Case went cold within 6 months. I knew that name. Everyone in the county knew that name. It had been all over the news. A young mother of 2 who'd vanished after a PDA meeting and turned up dead a week later. The police had never found who did it, and eventually, the story faded from the headlines, replaced by newer tragedies. But what did that have to do with? "Daniel didn't choose this place randomly," James said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Someone told him to bring you here. Someone who knows this road very, very well." "You're insane," I breathed, but my mind was already racing, connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Daniel's sudden coldness over the past few years. Victoria's inexplicable hatred of me. The way they'd both looked at me in the car, not with anger but with something worse. Something like justification. "Maybe I am," James agreed. "Or maybe I'm the only person who can save your life right now. Because, Ellie, there's a truck heading your way. Dark blue Chevy, no plates, driver wearing a ski mask. Should be there in about 4 minutes. And when it arrives, you're not going to like what happens next." "How do you?" 3.5 minutes now. "I'd start moving if I were you." The line went dead. I stood there for maybe 2 seconds, my rational mind screaming that this was a prank, a cruel joke, that James was just trying to terrify me for reasons I couldn't fathom. But then I heard it. The distant rumble of an engine, growing louder, coming from the direction Daniel's car had disappeared. And something in my gut, that ancient survival instinct that had kept humans alive for millennia, told me James was telling the truth. I grabbed my purse and ran. My heels caught on the gravel immediately, sending me sprawling forward. I kicked them off without thinking, leaving them behind like Cinderella fleeing the ball, except there was no prince waiting for me. Just darkness and dirt, and the growing certainty that someone wanted me dead. The engine sound grew louder. I could see headlights now, cresting the hill behind me, moving faster than any truck should on this road. Moving like the driver had a purpose. A destination. Me. I veered off the road into the field, tall grass whipping at my stockinged legs, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My feet screamed in protest as rocks and thorns tore at them, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because behind me, I heard the truck slow down, heard the gravel crunching as it pulled to the side of the road exactly where I'd been standing moments before. A door opened. Closed. Footsteps. Coming after me. I ducked behind a cluster of trees, pressing my hand over my mouth to muffle the sound of my breathing. Through the branches, I could see a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. The ski mask James mentioned was real. This was real. This was happening. My phone buzzed in my purse. I fumbled for it, nearly dropping it, saw James's name on the screen. I answered without speaking, terrified any sound would give away my location. "There's an old barn about 200 yards to your left," James whispered, as if he could see me right now. And maybe he could. "Get there. Hide. I'm coming for you." "Why?" I breathed, so quietly I wasn't sure he'd hear. "Because 33 years ago you saved my life, Ellie. Whether you remember it or not." His voice cracked, revealing emotion I'd never heard from him before. "And because what's happening to you right now? It's my fault. All of it. The man in the mask, Daniel's betrayal, Robert's death." He stopped abruptly. In the background, I heard a woman's voice, sharp and angry, saying something I couldn't make out. "James!" I whispered urgently. "James, what do you mean Robert's death?" But he was gone. And behind me, the footsteps were getting closer, accompanied now by the sound of a gun being cocked. I ran toward where I thought the barn might be, praying James was right, praying this wasn't all part of some elaborate trap. And wondering, with a horror that made my stomach turn, what James had meant about Robert's death not being the accident everyone thought it was. Because Robert had died of a heart attack in his sleep. Natural causes. The doctors had confirmed it. There'd been no investigation, no questions, no reason to suspect anything else. Unless there had been, and I'd been too blinded by grief to see it. I found the barn, or what was left of it, just as my lungs were about to give out. The door hung crooked on rusted hinges, and I slipped inside, pressing myself against the wall in the darkness. The smell of rotted hay and animal waste filled my nostrils, but I'd never been more grateful for any shelter in my life. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Then started again, coming straight toward the barn. The barn door exploded inward with a crash that made me scream before I could stop myself. Moonlight flooded through the opening, silhouetting the man in the ski mask, the gun in his hand pointed directly at where I'd pressed myself against the wall. But in my panic to hide, I'd chosen the wrong wall. I was fully visible, trapped like a rat in a corner, with nowhere left to run. "Please," I whispered, raising my hands. "Please, I don't know what this is about, but I have money I can." "Shut up," the man said, and my blood turned to ice. Because that voice was familiar too. He reached up and pulled off the ski mask, and I found myself staring at a face I'd seen a dozen times at family dinners, birthday parties, Christmas celebrations. Derek, Victoria's brother. The man who'd always been just a little too friendly, who Daniel had hired at the firm last year despite his questionable resume. "Derek," my voice shook. "What are you doing?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What I should have done the moment Victoria married into your family. Cleaning up loose ends." "I don't understand." "Of course you don't. You never understood anything, did you, Eleanor?" He took a step closer, and I pressed harder against the wall, as if I could somehow melt through it. "You didn't understand why Victoria randomly applied for a job at Daniel's firm 5 years ago. Didn't question why she pursued him so aggressively. Didn't wonder why she was so eager to marry into your family despite the fact that you're not rich, you're not connected, you're just ordinary people living ordinary lives." My mind was spinning. She pursued him for what? Why? For me. A new voice, sharp and clear, came from the doorway. Victoria stepped into the barn, still wearing her funeral dress, still looking like the perfect daughter-in-law. Except now I could see what I'd missed all along. The coldness in her eyes wasn't just dislike. It was calculation. Everything I've done for the past 5 years has been about getting close to you, Eleanor. About gaining your trust, becoming part of your family. About waiting for exactly the right moment. The right moment for what? I demanded, fear giving way to anger. To kill me? Why? I've never done anything to you. Not to me, Victoria corrected, moving to stand beside her brother. To James. James Morrison. The name hit me like a physical blow. Morrison. Jennifer Morrison, the woman found dead on this very road. And suddenly, pieces I didn't even know were part of the same puzzle began clicking into place. Jennifer was our mother, Derek finished. And you killed her. I didn't. The words exploded out of me. I didn't even know her. Liar. Victoria's composure cracked, revealing the rage beneath. You knew exactly who she was. She was James's wife. The woman he married 2 years after you dumped him. The woman who died because she found out the truth about what you did. I shook my head frantically. This was madness. I haven't seen James in over 30 years. Whatever happened to your mother, I had nothing to do with it. Then explain this. Victoria pulled out her phone, swiped through it, and held up a photo. Even in the dim light, I could make out a handwritten letter, the ink faded but legible. This is from our mother's diary, dated 1 week before she died. Met with Eleanor Hartley today. She finally admitted everything about the accident. About what really happened to baby Thomas. James will be devastated when he finds out his first son didn't die of SIDS. He was murdered by the woman he thought loved him. Want to revise your story now? The world tilted. Baby Thomas. A name I hadn't heard in over 3 decades. A name I'd forced myself to forget because the pain of remembering was too much. Thomas was. I couldn't finish. The words stuck in my throat like broken glass. Was James's son, Victoria said coldly. His son with you. The baby you had when you were 20 years old, before you ran away and reinvented yourself. The baby whose death certificate says SIDS, but whose body was never properly examined because you had him cremated within 24 hours. She paused, letting that sink in. The baby you murdered so you could escape James and start over. No. The word came out as a sob. No, that's not what happened. Thomas died in his sleep. I would never. Save it, Derek cut in, raising the gun higher. We've spent 5 years investigating you, Eleanor. 5 years gathering evidence, building our case. We know you smothered him. We know you were planning to leave James anyway. There are records of the bus ticket you bought for the day after Thomas died. We know you collected the life insurance money your parents had taken out on the baby. And we know that when our mother figured it all out and confronted you 3 days before she died, you did something to her. Said something, threatened something, we don't know exactly what. But she was terrified that last week. Kept saying she had to go to the police, that she had to tell James the truth. And then she ended up dead in a ditch on this very road, ruled as unsolved homicide. And you think I couldn't even finish the sentence. The accusation was so absurd, so far from reality, that I couldn't comprehend it. We don't think we know, Victoria said. And now you're going to die the same way she did. Tonight. On this road. And everyone will think you wandered off in your grief and succumbed to exposure, or maybe got hit by a passing car. Daniel's already laid the groundwork. He'll tell everyone you were becoming unstable, that you were talking about not wanting to go on without Robert. They'll believe him. They always do. Daniel knows. That hurt worse than the gun pointed at my chest. He knows what you're doing. Victoria smiled. Who do you think suggested we bring you here? The barn seemed to spin around me. My son. My baby. The child I'd raised, loved, sacrificed everything for. He was part of this. He wanted me dead based on lies, on distorted history, on a version of events that had never happened. I need to explain, I said desperately. About Thomas, about your mother, about all of it. If you'll just listen. The time for explanations ended 5 years ago, Derek said, his finger moving to the trigger. And then, from somewhere behind them, a voice called out. Actually, I think you'll want to hear what she has to say. Because everything you think you know about your mother's death is wrong. James stepped into the barn, and the look on Victoria and Derek's faces told me they hadn't expected this. Hadn't planned for their father, the man they were supposedly avenging, to interrupt their revenge. Dad! Victoria's voice shook. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making the same mistake I did. James said quietly, his eyes meeting mine across the space between us. The mistake that actually got your mother killed. He pulled out a folder from inside his jacket, opened it, and held up a document. Even from where I stood, I could see official stamps, signatures, legal formatting. This is the real police report from your mother's death investigation. The one that was buried. The one I paid a lot of money to keep hidden because I was ashamed. His voice cracked. Your mother wasn't killed because she discovered some secret about Eleanor. She was killed because she discovered a secret about me. What are you talking about? Derek demanded, but his gun hand was wavering now. I'm talking about the fact that I killed her, James said simply. Not intentionally. Not maliciously. But killed her nonetheless. The barn fell into absolute silence except for the sound of Victoria's sharp intake of breath. Jennifer found out I'd been embezzling from the company I worked for, James continued, his eyes dead, his voice hollow. $500,000 over 3 years. She said she was going to the police. We argued. Here, on this road, in the car. I was driving, she was crying, and I got so angry I stopped paying attention. When I looked up, we were heading straight for a tree. I swerved. Jennifer wasn't wearing her seatbelt. She went through the windshield. You're lying, Victoria whispered, but she didn't sound certain anymore. I wish I was, sweetheart. James looked at his daughter with something like anguish. I panicked. I pulled her from the wreckage, tried to make it look like she'd been attacked, left her in the ditch. And then I went home and played the grieving husband. The police bought it. Everyone bought it. Except your Uncle Richard, who's been blackmailing me ever since. He turned to me then. But that letter you found in your mother's diary? The one about Eleanor and Thomas? I wrote that. I planted it. Because I needed someone else to blame, and Eleanor was the perfect target. She'd already abandoned me once. Everyone who knew our history would believe she was capable of terrible things. My knees buckled. I slid down the wall until I was sitting in the filth of the barn floor. You framed me. I framed you, James agreed. And I'm sorry. God, Eleanor, I'm so sorry. But Thomas, Victoria's voice was barely audible now. The baby. Died of SIDS, exactly like Eleanor said. James pulled out another document. This is from a private investigator I hired last year, when I finally started feeling guilty enough to check. Thomas's death was investigated. There was no evidence of foul play. Eleanor cremated him quickly because she was poor, alone, and couldn't afford a funeral. The insurance money she collected? $2,000 that paid for her bus ticket to start over and rent for her first apartment. Everything I told you about her was a lie to justify what I'd done to your mother. The gun in Derek's hand dropped slowly to his side. He looked at his sister, then at his father, confusion and betrayal warring on his face. But we spent 5 years, we ruined her life, we turned Daniel against her, You did what I manipulated you into doing, James interrupted. Because I'm a coward who couldn't face what he'd done. And now an innocent woman is about to pay the price for my crimes again. Unless you choose to stop this right now. Victoria was staring at me, and I could see the exact moment she realized the enormity of what they'd done. What they'd been about to do. Her face crumpled, and she took a step back, shaking her head. Oh my God, she breathed. Daniel, we turned your son against you. We made him dump his mother on an empty road the day of his father's funeral. I finished, my voice hollow. Made him believe I deserved it. I'll fix it, Victoria said quickly, desperately. I'll tell him everything, I'll explain. Will you? I looked at her with eyes that had seen too much, learned too much. Will you tell him how you married him as part of a revenge plot? How every moment of your relationship was built on lies? Will you tell him his wife helped plan his mother's murder? She flinched like I'd struck her. I didn't think so, I said quietly. Then what do we do? Derek asked, and he suddenly looked very young, very lost. How do we fix this? I pulled myself to my feet, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. You can start by taking me home. And then, I looked at James, at the man who'd destroyed my life twice over. Then we're all going to sit down with Daniel and tell him the truth. Every bit of it. And he can decide what to do with the family he thought he had. But even as I said it, I knew the real truth wouldn't be revealed tonight. Because I hadn't told them about the letter hidden in Robert's safety deposit box. The letter I'd discovered 3 days ago while going through his papers after his death. The letter that revealed my perfect husband had been hiding a secret of his own. A secret that connected him to James, to Victoria, to everything that had happened. A secret that made me question whether Robert's heart attack had been quite as natural as everyone believed. If you're still watching right now, you're exactly the kind of viewer I love. Subscribe so I can keep giving you stories that touch your heart. Hit that bell so you never miss what happens next. The drive back to town was suffocating in its silence. Victoria drove this time, her hands trembling on the wheel as Derek sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window with hollow eyes, and I occupied the back seat where I'd started this nightmare journey. James had taken his own car, said he needed time to think, needed to figure out how to confess everything without destroying what little remained of his relationship with his children. But I knew the real reason he'd left separately. He was giving me space to process what I'd learned. Or maybe he was giving himself time to run. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my purse, hands still shaking, and saw a text from an unknown number. The safety deposit box. Get to it before Daniel does. My heart stopped. Robert. But Robert was dead. I'd watched them lower his casket into the ground just hours ago. Stop the car, I said suddenly. Victoria's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. What? Stop the car right now. I reached for the door handle, ready to throw myself out if necessary. Victoria pulled over so fast the tires squealed. Eleanor, what's wrong? Everything, I breathed, staring at the text. Everything is wrong. Robert's dead, but someone just sent me a text signed with his initial. James said Robert's death was his fault, but didn't explain how. And 3 days ago, I found a letter in Robert's safety deposit box that I haven't told anyone about, because I didn't understand what it meant. Until now. Derek turned around to face me. What did the letter say? I closed my eyes, reciting from memory. Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive, but James had proof of what I did 25 years ago. Proof that could destroy not just me, but you and Daniel too. I've been paying him to keep quiet ever since he found out. But the money's running out, and he's getting desperate. If anything happens to me, especially if it looks like natural causes, you need to know it wasn't. There are too many people who want me dead now. Too many secrets that need to stay buried. Trust no one. Not James. Not Daniel. Not even Victoria. Everyone has been lying to you, even me. The key to everything is in box 237 at 2nd Street Storage. Our anniversary is the code. I love you and I'm sorry. The silence that followed was deafening. What did Robert do? Victoria finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, I admitted. The letter was the only thing in the safety deposit box. I was planning to check the storage unit, but then Robert died and Daniel turned cold, and everything happened so fast. I stopped, realization crashing over me. Daniel knew. That's why he changed. Not 5 years ago when Victoria married him. Recently. Right before Robert died. What are you saying? Derek asked, though his face suggested he'd already figured it out. I'm saying my husband didn't die of a heart attack, I said slowly, the pieces finally clicking into place. I'm saying someone killed him. And I'm saying my son might have helped. Victoria's face had gone white. No. Daniel wouldn't, he's not a murderer, He dumped his mother on an empty road to die. I interrupted coldly. What's murder compared to that? My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. You have 2 hours. They're coming for the storage unit tonight. Trust James. He's the only one who can help now. Who the hell is sending these? I demanded, showing the phone to Derek and Victoria. Derek studied it, frowning. The number's spoofed. Could be anyone. Could be someone who knew Robert, using his initial to get your attention. Or it could be Robert, a voice said from outside the car. We all jumped. James was standing by the driver's window, looking grim. We need to go. Now. Daniel's not at your house. I just drove by. His car is parked outside 2nd Street Storage. With 2 other vehicles I don't recognize. My blood ran cold. He's going for box 237. Then we need to get there first, James said. Because whatever's in that box, it's worth killing for. 2nd Street Storage sat on the edge of town, a sprawling complex of garage-style units protected by a chain-link fence and a security gate that hadn't worked properly in years. We pulled into the parking lot, Victoria's sedan and James's truck, and immediately spotted Daniel's car. And beside it, a dark van and a Mercedes I recognized from the firm's parking lot. Daniel's law partner, Gerald Pierce. A man Robert had mentioned several times with an edge in his voice I'd never quite understood. Stay in the car, James ordered, but I was already opening the door. That's my son in there, I said. And whatever Robert left for me, I'm going to get it. We moved as a group through the complex, following the unit numbers until we reached 237. The door was already open, light spilling out into the darkness. Inside, I could hear voices arguing. Don't care what he promised you, Daniel was saying, his voice tight with anger. My father is dead. His deals died with him. Your father's deals are the only reason you're not in prison right now, Gerald responded smoothly. Robert knew things about you, Daniel. Things about what really happened to that client trust fund money. Things that would end your career and put you behind bars for embezzlement if they came out. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle my gasp. Embezzlement. Just like James. History repeating itself through generations. Robert's dead, Daniel repeated. He can't testify. No, but his documentation can. A third voice unfamiliar. And before he died, he made copies of everything. Bank records, wire transfers, emails between you and that offshore account. He was going to turn you in, Daniel. Would have too if we hadn't. Shut up, Daniel snapped. If you hadn't what? I stepped into the light, and all three men whirled to face me. If you hadn't killed him? Daniel's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, fear, and finally resignation. Mom, you shouldn't be here. Obviously, I said coldly. I should be dead in a ditch on Route 47. That was the plan, wasn't it? Get rid of me before I found Robert's evidence. Before I could figure out that my own son embezzled from his clients, and then murdered his father to cover it up. It wasn't murder, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. I gave him something to help him sleep. Something to make his heart slow down. The doctor said it was natural causes. No one suspected. Because you made it look natural, James interrupted, walking in behind me. Just like I did with Jennifer. Seems it runs in the family. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw James. What are you doing here? You said you'd handle this, that you'd get Mom out of the picture, and we'd all get our cut of Robert's life insurance. Plans changed, James said simply. Turns out I'm not as much of a monster as I thought I was. The puzzle pieces were all falling into place now, creating a picture so ugly I wanted to look away. You were working together, I breathed. You and Daniel. That's how Daniel knew to take me to Route 47. That's how you knew where I'd be, what was happening. You were working together, I breathed. You and Daniel. That's how Daniel knew to take me to Route 47. That's how you knew where I'd be, what was happening. You planned it together. James had the decency to look ashamed. Not exactly. Daniel reached out to me 6 months ago. Said he'd figured out who I was, that Victoria had told him everything about her suspicions. He wanted to make a deal. What kind of deal? Victoria asked from behind me, her voice cracking. Daniel looked at his wife, and for the first time, I saw real emotion cross his face. I'm sorry, Vic. I lied to you too. I didn't marry you because I loved you. I mean, I do now, but at first. He swallowed hard. I married you because Gerald told me to. Because your father had information about the firm's illegal activities, and we needed to keep him quiet. Gerald figured if I married into James's family, we'd have leverage. Victoria stumbled backward like he'd physically struck her. Derek caught her before she fell. So everyone was using everyone, I said numbly. James used his children to get revenge on me for crimes I didn't commit. Gerald used Daniel to control James. Daniel used Victoria to protect himself from prosecution. And Robert. I looked at the open storage unit, at the boxes stacked inside. Robert was trying to fix it all before it killed him. Your husband was a good man caught in an impossible situation, Gerald said, his smooth voice grating on my nerves. He found out about Daniel's embezzlement 2 years ago. Confronted him. Daniel panicked and came to me. I told him about James, about the leverage we had. We needed Robert to stay quiet, so we threatened to expose everything. Daniel's crimes, James's crimes, even Victoria's family's involvement in some questionable business dealings. Robert agreed to keep quiet in exchange for time to make things right. He was going to pay back Daniel's victims himself, sell everything you own to cover it. But he ran out of time, I whispered. He ran out of money, Gerald corrected. And when he couldn't pay anymore, when he told Daniel he was going to confess everything to the authorities. He shrugged. Well, Daniel made a choice. I turned to look at my son, this stranger wearing my child's face. You killed your own father. He was going to destroy me. Daniel's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down his face. Everything I'd built, my entire career, my reputation, gone. Because he suddenly grew a conscience? After covering for me for 2 years. He was covering for you because he loved you. I said, my voice breaking. Because you were his son and he hoped you'd find a way to make things right. And you thanked him by poisoning him. It was supposed to be painless, Daniel said, as if that made it better. Just an overdose of his heart medication mixed with sleeping pills. He went to sleep and didn't wake up. He didn't suffer. But I have been suffering. The words exploded out of me. I lost my husband, and then my son tried to have me killed. Do you understand what you've done? Do you have any idea? A gunshot cracked through the air. Everyone froze. Gerald stood with a smoking pistol in his hand, pointed at the ceiling. Enough talking, he said calmly. Here's what's going to happen. Eleanor, you're going to get whatever's in that storage unit. You're going to bring it out here. And then we're all going to come to an arrangement. And if I refuse? I asked, though my voice shook. Gerald lowered the gun until it was pointed at Victoria. Then I start eliminating people until you cooperate. Starting with the daughter-in-law who's already been framed for attempted murder. Won't be hard to make it look like she attacked you. You defended yourself, tragic accident all around. James moved to stand between Gerald and Victoria. You're not shooting anyone. Dad, don't, Victoria started. But Gerald was already squeezing the trigger. The second gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. James jerked backward, clutching his shoulder, blood spreading across his shirt. Derek lunged for Gerald, but Daniel grabbed his brother-in-law, holding him back. Let him go. Victoria screamed, clawing at Daniel's arms. And in the chaos, I did the only thing I could think of. I ran into the storage unit. Box 237 wasn't hard to find. Robert had marked it with a bright red X. My hands shook as I entered our anniversary date into the combination lock. June 15, 92. The box popped open, and inside I found a thick manila envelope and a small flip phone, the kind drug dealers used in movies. Burner phone. Untraceable. The phone was already on. Already open to a text conversation with me. My heart nearly stopped. Robert had set this up before he died. Had programmed messages to send to me at specific times, triggered by... What? His death. The opening of the safety deposit box? I scrolled up and saw dozens of unsent messages, all queued with timestamps. One was scheduled to send in 30 seconds. I heard footsteps behind me. Gerald, with Daniel right beside him, the gun now pointed at my back. Give me the envelope, Gerald ordered. No, I said simply. The phone in my hand buzzed. New message sent to my real phone. Tell them about the copies. Tell them about Detective Morrison. Tell them it's too late. Detective Morrison. Jennifer Morrison's maiden name. She'd had a brother on the police force. A brother who'd never believed James's story about her death. A brother who'd been investigating for 5 years, waiting for evidence. And apparently Robert had given it to him. Whatever's in this envelope, I said slowly, turning to face Gerald and Daniel. Robert already copied it. Already gave it to the police. You killed him for nothing. You're blowing, Gerald said, but his voice wavered. Am I? I pulled out my real phone, showed them the text. Robert set this up before he died. He knew one of you would kill him. And he made sure that when you did, all the evidence would automatically be sent to the authorities. That's impossible, Daniel whispered. Dad wasn't that smart, he couldn't have. Your father was a lot smarter than you gave him credit for, I interrupted. Smart enough to document everything. Smart enough to record your confession, Daniel. Smart enough to set up a dead man's switch that would trigger if he didn't check in every 48 hours. I was guessing now, but the look on Gerald's face told me I was right. How long has it been since Robert died? 3 days? 4? Whatever system he set up, it's already activated. The police already have everything. As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. Gerald's face went white. You called them. Before you came here, you. I didn't, I said honestly. But Robert did. Or rather, his system did. Automatically. The moment I opened this storage unit. The sirens were getting louder now. Multiple cars from the sound of it. Gerald raised the gun, pointing it at my head. Then you're no use to me anymore. Shoot her and you'll definitely go down for murder, James said from the doorway, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Right now you might be able to claim coercion, diminished capacity, make some kind of deal. Kill her in cold blood and you're done. Gerald's hand trembled. For a long moment, I thought he was going to pull the trigger anyway. But then the first police car screeched into the parking lot, and he lowered the gun, his face crumbling. Daniel sank to his knees. I'm sorry, he whispered, though I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or to Robert's ghost. Dad, I'm so sorry. But I felt nothing for him. No forgiveness, no sympathy. Just a vast, yawning emptiness where my love for my son had once lived. The police swarmed the storage facility within minutes. Detective Robert Morrison, I recognized him from the news coverage of his sister's death, walked straight to me, his face grim. "Mrs. Hartley?" he asked. "Your husband contacted me 3 months ago. Said he had evidence about my sister's murder and several other crimes. I've been waiting for his green light to move forward." "The green light was his death," I said hollowly. "He knew someone would kill him. He just didn't know it would be his own son." Detective Morrison looked at Daniel, who was being handcuffed by 2 officers, and something dark passed across his face. "Justice is a strange thing," he said quietly. "My sister's been dead 5 years. Your husband's been dead 3 days. But maybe finally they can both rest." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "They arrested Gerald and Daniel first for murder, attempted murder, embezzlement, conspiracy. James was taken to the hospital under police escort for his shoulder wound, with charges pending. Victoria and Derek were questioned but ultimately released, their involvement deemed coerced, and their cooperation valuable. And I stood in the parking lot of 2nd Street Storage, watching my son, my baby, my only child, being loaded into a police car, and wondered how everything had gone so catastrophically wrong. "Mrs. Hartley?" A young officer approached me. "We need to take your statement. And there's one more thing. We found this in your husband's car. The car he died in." He held up an evidence bag containing a small video camera. It was hidden under the seat, recording. "Your husband, he recorded his own death." My knees gave out. The officer caught me, helped me to sit on the curb. "Do I have to watch it?" I whispered. "No, ma'am. But you should know, your husband's last words were about you. He said he loved you. Said he was sorry he couldn't protect you better. And he said..." The officer's voice cracked. "He said Daniel brought him sleeping pills and he knew what they really were. But he took them anyway because he thought his death might save you. He thought if Daniel killed him you'd be safe. That Daniel would have no reason to hurt you. But Robert had been wrong. So terribly wrong. Because the moment Robert died, I'd become the next target. The next loose end to tie up. If he hadn't set up his dead man's switch, if he hadn't been 10 steps ahead even in death, I would be lying in a ditch on Route 47 right now. My perfect husband had saved my life by orchestrating evidence from beyond the grave. And I would spend the rest of mine learning to live with that knowledge. The courtroom was packed 3 months later. I sat in the front row, watching my son stand before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his eyes downcast. Victoria sat 3 rows behind me. We'd spoken only once since that night, a brief, painful conversation where she'd apologized and I'd accepted because what else was there to do? Derek had moved to another state, unable to bear the weight of what his family had done. And James was in a different courtroom across town, facing his own reckoning for Jennifer's death. The evidence Robert had provided was enough to reopen the case, and this time, the truth couldn't be buried. "Daniel Robert Hartley," the judge intoned, "you have been found guilty of murder in the 2nd degree, attempted murder, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say?" Daniel stood slowly. For the first time since his arrest, he looked directly at me. And what I saw in his eyes made my breath catch. Not remorse, not exactly, but something close to it. Recognition of what he'd lost. Understanding of what he'd destroyed. "I want to say I'm sorry," he began, his voice hoarse. "To my mother, who I tried to have killed. To my father, whose only crime was loving me too much. To my wife, who I used and manipulated." He paused, swallowing hard. "But sorry isn't enough. It doesn't bring Dad back. It doesn't undo the terror I put Mom through. It doesn't repair the damage I've caused." He took a shaky breath. "My father left a video. I'm sure you've all seen it by now. Him, taking the pills I gave him, knowing they would kill him, doing it anyway because he thought it would save my mother. Because he believed I still had some humanity left. That I wouldn't hurt her if I didn't need to." Tears ran down Daniel's face now. He was wrong. I would have done anything to save myself. Even kill my own mother. And the worst part? I didn't even feel bad about it at the time. I just felt justified. Like she deserved it for getting in my way. The courtroom was absolutely silent. "I don't know when I became this person," Daniel continued. "When I stopped being the son who loved his parents and became the monster who killed his father and tried to kill his mother. But I did become that. And I have to live with it. Every day, for the rest of my life, I have to live with the fact that the best man I ever knew died believing there was still good in me. And he was wrong." He finally looked away from me toward the judge. "I'm not asking for mercy. I'm not asking for leniency. I'm just asking that my father's name be cleared of any wrongdoing. That the records show he was trying to stop me, not help me. That he died a hero, not an accomplice. The judge studied Daniel for a long moment. Your father's record has already been cleared based on the evidence he provided before his death. As for you, Daniel Hartley, I sentence you to 25 years to life in state prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 20 years. May you use that time to find whatever redemption is still possible for your soul. The gavel came down. Guards moved forward to take Daniel away. As they led him past me, he stopped. "Mom," he whispered, "I know you can't forgive me, but I need you to know, I did love you. Once. Before everything got twisted. I really did love you." I looked at this stranger wearing my son's face and felt nothing. No anger, no grief, no love. Just emptiness. "The Daniel who loved me died a long time ago," I said quietly. "I buried him long before I buried your father." Something broke behind his eyes. He nodded once, and then the guards pulled him away, and I watched my son disappear through the courtroom doors for what might be the last time in 20 years. If I lived that long. If I wanted to. Outside the courthouse, Detective Morrison was waiting for me. "Mrs. Hartley, I wanted to let you know, James Morrison pleaded guilty this morning. Manslaughter for Jennifer's death. He'll serve 8 to 15 years. I nodded. "And Gerald?" 20 years conspiracy to commit murder. He's the one who actually planned most of it, convinced Daniel that killing Robert was the only way out. Morrison paused. "Your husband's evidence saved a lot of lives, Mrs. Hartley. Not just yours. We found connections to 3 other suspicious deaths at Gerald's firm. People who were about to expose wrongdoing. People who died of natural causes that looked a little too convenient in hindsight. Robert would be glad to know his death meant something," I said softly. "It meant everything." Morrison handed me a business card. "My personal number's on there. If you ever need anything, support group recommendations, someone to talk to, help with the media, you call me. Your husband gave me the truth about my sister. That's a debt I can never repay, but I'll spend the rest of my career trying." I took the card, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Detective." He left, and I stood on the courthouse steps, looking out at the city where I'd lived for 3 decades. The city where I'd raised my son, buried my husband, almost died myself. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like a graveyard. "Eleanor?" Victoria's voice came from behind me. "Can we talk?" I turned to find her standing there, looking smaller somehow. Diminished. "What is there to say?" "I'm leaving," she said simply. "Filing for divorce. Moving back to Oregon where I grew up. I can't stay here. Every street, every building, it all reminds me of the lies. Of what I helped create, even if I didn't understand what I was doing." "Where will you go?" "My grandmother's farm. She's the only family I have left who doesn't hate me." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted you to know. I'm testifying at James's sentencing hearing. Victim impact statement. I'm going to tell them what it was like growing up believing my mother was murdered, being raised by a man who used that grief to manipulate me into destroying an innocent woman's life. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what he did." "That won't bring your mother back," I said gently. "No, but maybe it'll help me figure out who I am without the lies." She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope. "This is for you. Daniel asked me to give it to you." I read it. "I hope that's okay. I needed to know if he was trying to manipulate you one more time. But it's real, Eleanor. As real as he's capable of being anymore." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "Thank you." Victoria nodded, started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth, your husband really did love you. I saw him once, about a month before he died, at the coffee shop near the firm. He was working on a laptop, and I glanced over his shoulder. He was writing you a letter. Page after page of apologies and explanations and love notes. I only caught a few sentences, but one of them stuck with me. He wrote, "Eleanor has given me 32 years of heaven, and I've repaid her with 3 months of hell. But I'll fix it. Even if it costs me everything. Even if it costs me my life. She deserves better than the mess I've made." My vision blurred with tears. He kept his promise. "He did," Victoria agreed softly. "He fixed it. He saved you. And he made sure everyone who hurt you paid the price." She paused. "I'm sorry I was one of those people." "So am I whispered. Victoria left, and I was alone on the courthouse steps with an envelope from my son and a future I no longer recognized. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, Daniel's handwriting cramped and desperate. "Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to still think of me as your son. But I need to tell you the truth, the whole truth, one last time. Dad knew I was going to kill him. That video the police found? He set it up deliberately. He asked me to bring him the pills. Told me he'd been having trouble sleeping since he found out about the embezzlement. Could I get him something stronger from Gerald's pharmacy? I thought I was being so clever, crushing up the extra medication, mixing it into the sleeping pills. But he knew. He knew exactly what I was doing, and he let me do it anyway. Why? Because he'd figured out Gerald's plan. Gerald wanted you dead first. You were the wild card, the person who might figure everything out. But Dad convinced him to wait, said we needed to handle it carefully, make it look natural. He bought you time. Time to find the storage unit, time to get the evidence, time to survive. And then he took the pills knowing they would kill him, because he knew his death would trigger all the safeguards he'd put in place. Would send the evidence to Detective Morrison. Would save your life. He died to save you, Mom. And his last words, the ones the video didn't catch because the audio was muted? He looked at the camera, looked at you and mouthed, "I'm sorry. I love you. Run. I killed the best man I've ever known. The only person who loved me enough to die for me, even knowing what I'd become. And I can't take it back. Can't fix it. Can't make it right. I just wanted you to know. In the end, Dad won. He saved you. He exposed everyone. He got justice for Jennifer Morrison and all of Gerald's other victims. He was a hero. And I was the villain. I'm sorry isn't enough. But it's all I have left. Daniel." I stood on those courthouse steps and read my son's letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face, until the words blurred into meaninglessness. Robert had known, had chosen, had orchestrated his own death to save me. And I would have to live with that knowledge for the rest of my life. 6 months later, I sold the house. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I couldn't sleep in the bed where Robert died. Couldn't walk past Daniel's childhood bedroom without seeing the little boy he'd been before greed and fear corrupted him into something monstrous. I moved to a small apartment across town. Started volunteering at a support group for families of crime victims. Found a therapist who specialized in trauma. Learned slowly, painfully, how to exist in a world where everyone I'd loved most had either died or betrayed me. On what would have been Robert's 65th birthday, I visited his grave. The headstone was simple. Robert James Hartley. Beloved husband. Hero. Rest in peace. I'd added the word hero myself. Fought with the cemetery board for weeks to get it approved. But Detective Morrison had backed me up, provided documentation of everything Robert had done, everyone he'd saved. In the end, they'd agreed. "I miss you," I said to the granite marker. "Every day I miss you. And I'm so angry with you for leaving me alone with this. For not trusting me enough to tell me what was happening. For choosing to die rather than letting me help." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, and I could almost hear Robert's voice. "I had to protect you, Eleanor. It was the only thing I could still do." "Well, you did," I continued, wiping tears from my eyes. "You protected me. You saved me. You made sure Daniel and Gerald and James all paid for what they did. But you left me here to pick up the pieces, and some days I don't know if I can. Some days I don't know if I want to. I placed flowers on the grave, roses, like he used to buy me every Friday. But I'm trying. For you. Because you died believing I was worth saving, and I can't let that be for nothing. So I'm trying to build a life out of the wreckage. It's not much, but it's something." I stood there until the sun began to set, talking to my dead husband, and then I walked back to my car. On the windshield was a note. "Eleanor, I'm being released next month. Early parole for cooperation and health issues. I'd like to meet. To apologize in person. To try to explain, even though I know nothing I say will be enough. No pressure. Just, if you can find it in you, please consider it. James." I stared at the note for a long time. James Morrison. The man who'd framed me for murder, who'd helped my son plan my death, who'd killed his own wife and let me take the blame for it. The man who'd, in the end, helped save my life by exposing the conspiracy. I should have torn up the note. Should have called Detective Morrison and told him James was harassing me. Should have gotten a restraining order. Instead, I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Because I'd learned something over these past months of grief and healing. Forgiveness wasn't for the person being forgiven. It was for the person doing the forgiving. And I was so tired of carrying around all this anger, all this pain, all this betrayal. Maybe it was time to set some of it down. Maybe. I drove home as the last light faded from the sky, and for the first time since that terrible day on Route 47, I felt something like hope stirring in my chest. Fragile, tentative, barely there, but real. My son had dumped me on an empty road the day we buried his dad. He'd tried to have me killed, tried to erase me from existence to cover his own crimes. But I'd survived. Against all odds, despite everything, I'd survived. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. For now.